and Seaboard Marine. With over 35 shipping ports, find your shipping solution by calling Seaboard Marine at 949-4977.
Coming to you live from Radio Cayman Studio.
For the record.
For the record. For the record. Hear from your government officials, independents, and the opposition on issues that matter to you. For the record. Engage in an open dialogue between residents and lawmakers.
For the record.
For the record. For the record. Informative, impartial, insightful.
This is your talk show.
1-800-534-8255. Your calls, your input. This is For the Record. And now, your host, Orrett Connor.
Good morning and welcome to For the Record. Today is Monday, the 5th day of November 2018. I trust that everyone had an enjoyable weekend, whatever activity you may have been involved in, just staying at home, resting, getting yourself prepared for the new work week. For those of you who are athletically inclined, those who participated in the triathlon yesterday or the Cayman Breeze Fusion walk run on Saturday as well, which I understand has been very successful. And you may say, what do you mean you understand? You weren't part of it? Unfortunately, I wasn't, had other things to do, unfortunately, then. But I trust that everyone had an enjoyable weekend and that you're raring to go today. I want to thank you, our listening and viewing audience, for allowing Radio Cayman and, by extension, For the Record, into your homes, into your vehicles as you traverse the busy roads of the Cayman Islands, into your places of work, whether it be an office cubicle or if you're working in the outdoors. As you know, For the Record is a show produced by the staff and management of Radio Cayman, and it is geared towards keeping you abreast of issues as they arise and play out on the local, regional, and international scene. I am your host, Orrett Connor, and you're welcome to join me every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 7:30 a.m. until 9:30 a.m. Our phone lines are always open. There is always someone there waiting to take your call. It is my pleasure to welcome back in the control room none other than that beautiful radio voice of Miss Susan Watson. You can call us on our toll-free number provided, courtesy of Flow. That toll-free number is 1-800-534-8255. You can also call us on 949-8037 and 949-6990. If you don't like to talk on the telephone, email us at For the Record. That is one word, For the Record, at CANDW.KY. We also have a WhatsApp number. That WhatsApp number is 925-3261. We encourage you to send us a text message or leave us a voice note, the contents of which will be played during the course of the show. And of course, if you want to follow us live, then subscribe to Radio Cayman live stream, and you can follow us live as well. It is my pleasure to have in the studio again this morning. And no, you're not listening to Mr. Harris's talk show now on Monday mornings or Wednesday mornings. It is For the Record, but it is my pleasure to have in the studio again today after Wednesday's show, none other than MLA and Councillor Mr. Austin Harris.
Good morning to you, Mr. O.C. Good morning to the listening audience. A special good morning to the listeners tuned in from Prospect, the constituency in which I have the pleasure to represent. It is indeed a pleasure to be with you again this morning, though following last week's discussion, it does seem like becoming somewhat of a regular fixture here. But certainly this is, by all means, your show.
Yes. And, of course, we have another gentleman who's no stranger to For the Record, none other than Mr. Charles Clifford, the collector of customs in the Cayman Islands. And at some point in time, next year or possibly this year, his title is likely to change as well. Mr. Clifford, good morning, sir. Welcome back to For the Record.
Thank you very much, O.C. Good morning to you. Good morning to the listeners. And good morning to those who are watching us on television. I'm happy to be here this morning.
Okay. And I'm going to throw the mic straight over to Mr. Austin Harris and tell our listeners and viewers what we will be discussing this morning.
Absolutely. Thank you again, OC, and a pleasure to be here with you this morning. Pleasure to be joined by Mr. Charles Clifford, who you're absolutely correct. His title will change. I don't know if his uniform will change because I kind of like this rather professional uniform he has on now. But I have seen a sight of what the future uniform will look like, and I think he'll look quite dashing in that as well. We are here this morning to talk about the Customs and Border Control Bill 2018, one of the major pieces of legislation that will be coming to the Legislative Assembly when we resume on the 14th of November. As we discussed last week with regards to the Immigration Transition Bill, likewise, the Customs and Border Control Bill, in the first instance, seeks to repeal the Customs Law, I think it's 2017 revision, and replace it with, of course, the legal framework contained in the CBC bill. The bill seeks to complete the legal framework required in order to make the new Customs and Border Control operational. It seeks to empower its new director, Mr. Clifford, who, again, I'm delighted to see has certainly, won that particular hiring stage. I have every confidence in Mr. Clifford. His experience speaks for itself, and certainly the role that he continues to play in his present capacity is extremely important to this country. And I believe when we make that transition, that kind of experience and leadership will be essential to ensuring success. The bill will empower Mr. Clifford as director to assume the responsibilities, powers, and functions previously vested with the Collector of Customs as it relates to matters of entry and landing, visas, asylum, deportation, and otherwise applicable border control matters. It seeks to harmonize the terms of references that are regularly made to customs officers and immigration officers, basically allowing both of the organizations to become integrated, and those persons who are either referred to as customs officers or immigration officers today will be referred to as customs and border control officers going forward. Again, the bill also seeks to empower the organization and its officers with the responsibility for border management, to make decisions relating to granting and or refusing entry to persons entering the jurisdiction, with specified arrangements for appeal, to appeal decisions against CBC officers. Right now, of course, the work that is ongoing, as we talked about last week ever so briefly, will be largely the cross-training that is going on. Customs officers learning the role of immigration officers learning the role of customs officers, because certainly once that training has been completed, and once those individuals don the uniform of Customs and Border Control officer, they will be able to operate in the realms traditionally reserved for either customs or immigration officers. So we're very excited at the ministry to be able to get to this point as part of our transition from the traditional immigration and customs rules to a more specific rule, again, protecting our borders on the one hand, and as we discussed last week, saving the immigration and or administrative functions for others. And we believe what we'll get from this will be improved efficiency as well as performance for the country.
I think, sorry, Mr. Clifford, if you want to add to what Mr. Harris has said?
I think Mr. Harris essentially covered what the intent of the bill is. What we've essentially done in a nutshell is to take the provisions of the Customs Law 2017 revision and the border control components of the immigration law and merge the two into one bill to achieve what Mr. Harris has just outlined. The issue of cross-training, which was also referenced by Mr. Harris, is something that we began recently with our recent recruit training course. It was a basic customs training course, but what we did was we integrated 4 immigration officers into that training, and they graduated early last month. Yes. So that was the beginning of the cross-training, but it is a major undertaking, the cross-training in itself. And I think it is also important, while we're talking about the legislation, in terms of setting up expectations, that the public should be aware that this merger is a multi-year project. It's not all going to be done and dusted on January the 1st next year. There are a lot of work to be done after the 1st of January to complete the merger. We have taken advice from our colleagues in the UK and in the US and in Canada, for that matter. They've gone down a similar road. They have pointed out to us some of the mistakes that they made so that we can avoid making those types of mistakes. Because even though those countries are much larger than ours, the issues are similar. We're just dealing with the issues on a smaller scale. So we were very grateful for that advice and guidance. And interestingly enough, once we made this announcement, there was significant interest across the entire region in relation to what we were doing. So we've had representation from CCLEC, which is the Caribbean Customs Law Enforcement Council, and they're eager to talk to us about what we're doing. And so there's a meeting later this month in St. Lucia that I'll be attending, and I'm going to do a presentation to them there. Now, we've been very quick to point out to them that we're not experts in this. This is very, very new to us, but just like we learned lessons from our colleagues in other countries, we're happy to share with them what we've done so far, and perhaps some of the things that we would have done differently if we were starting today. So we're very happy to impart that knowledge, and I can tell you that there is significant interest across the entire region to do likewise.
If I can just certainly add to that point, I'm grateful Mr. Clifford made the remark because there's been some discussion in the public domain about specifically the merger and, of course, how this hasn't worked in other countries and why are the Cayman Islands picking this up. Whilst the opposition to this discussion is absolutely correct, it hasn't necessarily worked seamlessly in either the U.S. or the United Kingdom. But to Mr. Clifford's point, we have had the benefit of seeing what has worked and what hasn't worked. We've engaged in our stakeholder conversations or consulting conversations with U.S. Customs and Border Control, Homeland Security. We've had honest conversations about, if you had it to do all over again, what would you do differently? What would you keep? What would you get rid of? So the fact that they've gone down this road has taught the Cayman Islands some very useful lessons so that we don't have to make some of those same mistakes. So we are very confident that our transition towards a dedicated Customs and Border Control comes with it the advantage of seeing what other jurisdictions, both the United States and the United Kingdom, what worked for them, what hasn't worked for them, and giving us somewhat of a head start to again ensure the successful rollout and continuation of this new department.
I'm sure that the listening and viewing public are curious to know what are some of the visual changes that they're likely to see. Some of the obvious changes. Will you still have an immigration control and then a customs control, or will you have a situation where the first person or the first group of persons that you encounter when you disembark from, say, an aircraft, whether or not you will encounter a second group after, or you just simply pass that customs card or whatever on and go on, things of that nature.
So that sort of speaks to the point I made earlier about this being a multi-year project, and it won't all be done and dusted on January 1st, as I said earlier. So in terms of visual changes, the most obvious one will be the uniform. Yes. So there'll be a new uniform for the organization, a new crest. Officers who were in customs uniform and in immigration uniforms before will be in this single uniform. So they will be under wearing a new uniform, operating under a new brand. But functionally, come January the 1st, not a lot will change on the front line at the airport, as an example. So we will still have what used to be the immigration control and what used to be the customs control, functioning essentially how they are today. But over time, as we complete the cross-training, you will see a change in our business processes. That will ultimately lead to a single checkpoint. So for those who travel to Miami frequently, they would have seen the changes that took place there over the years. We're moving in a similar direction where we'll have a single checkpoint. Unless you are referred to secondary, you would only go through that single checkpoint. And when I was on the program on previous occasions, I mentioned this transition from the traditional gatekeepers approach to the intelligence-led risk management approach. So that's what's driving this change. And it is the intelligence-led approach that will underpin and will essentially be the engine of this new organization. It is the way to go. In the future, this is how border control is done. And in relation to passengers, they are similar. The changes that you will see taking place with respect to passengers and the processing of passengers arriving on aircraft and vessels, similar changes will occur with respect to processing cargo coming into the country. So we will transition to that intelligence-led approach across the board with respect to border control.
Okay, we're going to take a commercial break. When we return, folks, the conversation with MLA and Councillor Mr. Austin Harris and the Collector of Customs, Mr. Charles Clifford, will continue.
The Cayman Islands boasts of a long, colorful, and rich history. In tribute to our roots, Radio Cayman, the voice of the Cayman Islands, is pleased to bring you the Historical Vignette Series, sponsored by Cayman National Bank. Visit Cayman National Bank today for all of your financial needs. The Cayman Islands, he hath founded it upon the seas.
Major Joseph Rodriguez Watler, formerly known as Mr. Roddy Watler, was born on the 3rd of March, 1880 in the district of Red Bay. He died at age 75 in April of 1965. Major Watler served as Inspector of Police for some 33 years. He also served as lighthouse keeper, foreman of public works, boarding officer of vessels, and warehouse keeper. He was appointed officer in charge of the Cayman Islands Company of the Jamaican Home Guard on October the 1st, 1942, until March 31st, 1945, when the war ceased. During the hurricane of 1932, Major Watler exhibited much bravery in rescuing 20 people who were marooned in Red Bay. For this service, he was awarded the King George V and Queen Mary Silver Medal for bravery. Major Watler was also an elder and manager of Elmsland Memorial United Church for many years.
Radio Cayman's historical facts vignettes are proudly brought to you by Cayman National, with branches on all 3 Cayman Islands. Visit Cayman National Bank today for all of your financial needs.
I need a bank that is convenient for me.
What do you mean?
I need a bank that has easy-to-find locations and plenty ATMs when I need cash on the go.
Oh, well, that's easy. You need to bank with Cayman National. They have 7 customer service centers and 23 ATM locations. The newest one is at the East End Post Office, and I hear there's more to come.
Well, sounds like I need to bank with Cayman National Bank, the convenient bank, because they seem to be everywhere.
Yeah, that's true. Cayman National is everywhere. Surely they are Cayman's convenient bank.
Cayman National Bank. We're here for you.
A trip to New York City is the experience of a lifetime. Starting this December, Cayman Airways will be offering daily non-stop flights from Grand Cayman to New York City. That's right, Cayman Airways is going daily to New York City starting this December. Stroll through Central Park or take in the bright lights of Times Square, enjoy a Broadway show or visit museums, the Empire State Building, and so much more. Whether you're visiting for business or pleasure, you'll fall in love with New York City. And daily non-stop flights from Grand Cayman aboard Cayman Airways starting this December. For details and to book, call Cayman Airways reservations at 949-2311. Contact a travel agent or visit CaymanAirways.com. You remember the sale at Vamp Motors?
Yeah, the Your Sale, Your Choice, the one where you can get cash back or can put the savings to extend the warranty or upgrade features?
Yes, it's still going on, but now you can get $8,000 off a new Ford Ranger truck. $8,000, you know?
You for real?
Come see for yourself. While they still have so much to choose from, save big during Your Sale, Your Choice at Vamp Motors. With almost every vehicle on sale, you decide whether to get your dream ride at its lowest price. Take cash back, add years to the warranty or service plan. Choose an add-on or mix your options. Your sale, your choice, because you know what you need, and Vamp Motors will help you drive it home. Vamp Motors on Walkers Road.
The Cayman Pharmacy Group provides you with more than just prescriptions. We strive to make your health our concern. We recognize the complexities of pharmaceuticals and the need to personalize your care. That is why we offer personalized one-on-one counseling. Our pharmacists are here to assist you with questions you may have about your health and the medications you've been prescribed. With West Bay Pharmacy and CTMH Doctors Hospital Pharmacy, the Cayman Pharmacy Group has a location for you just around the corner. We care about your health.
Sometimes things just don't go as planned. That's why you need Contractors All-Risk Insurance from Fidelity Insurance Brokers. Ensure you're covered in the event of property damage and third-party injury or damage claims during your construction projects. And with Fidelity Insurance Brokers, you can be sure you are getting competitive pricing and superior customer service. Call us today for a free quote. Fidelity, we're good for you.
Cayman Kind is the Cayman experience.
We work at the Cayman Craft Market.
It is a myth that we do not need the cruise ship industry.
It is a fact that when there are no ships in port, we do not earn a living. We depend on the cruise industry, and if it was to reduce by half, many others just like us would suffer immensely. We want to work and provide for our families.
We need the pier.
Support the piers. Support our tourism.
System 1 loaded.
1-800-534-8255. What is on your mind when it comes to the government, independence, and the opposition? Issues that matter to you. 1-800-534-8255. Waiting to hear from you. For the Record with your host, Orrett Connor.
Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. It is my pleasure to have in the studio with me this morning none other than MLA and Councillor Mr. Austin Harris. Also with us, the Collector of Customs, Mr. Charles Clifford. We're discussing the draft Customs and Border Control Bill 2018, which will be tabled in the Legislative Assembly when the meeting starts on the 14th of December.
November,
sorry. Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Though we might be,
there until.
Well, there's a rumor circulating that we may actually have to go back to the LA for a December sitting. Again, we have a number of draft bills that are, in many cases, still in the drafting stages, not ready for delivery. But they are very important to us to maintain our schedule, if you will, on some of our goals and ambitions. So we may find ourselves going back to the LA in the Christmas month, but we're all hopeful that we are successful and efficient with our time in November, so that won't be necessary. But if it is, it is.
Okay, so that might have been a Freudian slip.
Or you might have been seeing, prophecy, seeing the future. I don't know.
So it is my pleasure to have with us the two gentlemen. We're discussing the Customs and Border Control Bill 2018. And before we went to the commercial break, Mr. Clifford wanted to add some more substance to what we're discussing. Mr. Clifford.
Thank you very much, OC. Yeah, just to complete my thought in relation to the transition to a single checkpoint, and what I mentioned earlier in relation to going essentially where someone would now be required to complete a customs declaration form or an immigration entry and landing form. Those will also be merged eventually once we complete this transition. Mm-hmm. So you would be required to do one form, whether that's an electronic form or not. And obviously, we're moving in that direction, so eventually it would be in electronic form. But in talking about that, I also wanted to mention the issue of technology and the need to embrace that in order to more efficiently process passengers and cargo. Mm-hmm. And so that's something that we're looking at. But technology is moving really, really rapidly. So we have to be careful where we invest our money. We don't want to invest our money in a product that's going to become obsolete in a very short period of time. Yeah. We've had the opportunity to work alongside our colleagues at Miami International Airport, U.S. Customs and Border Protection. And so we've seen their technology in operation. In one of their concourses, they've been piloting the facial recognition technology. Mm-hmm. So we've seen that in operation, and they're able to process those wide-body aircraft, the Airbus 380. Depending on the configuration, you're talking about upward of 400 passengers, and they can process an aircraft of that size within about 27 minutes.
Wow.
Using facial recognition technology. So, but I say all of that to say that even though they've made those advances in the United States, the Asian countries are actually ahead of them in terms of technology. So we need to look very carefully at what it is we're doing on the technological side and be very careful and prudent about where we invest our money, but just to assure the public that this is the direction we're going in. Intelligence-led border control, and it's going to result in not just more efficiencies in terms of processing passengers and cargo, but our detection rate we expect will go up as well once we fully embrace this change. That has been the experience in all other jurisdictions. The detection rate has gone up. They've become a lot more efficient. And so we expect the same results here in the Cayman Islands.
Yeah, I certainly want to thank Mr. Clifford again for that, for those comments, because it is absolutely essential that the public understands that, much like our conversation last week with regards to workforce opportunities and residency Cayman, technology will be one of the more significant backbones that will drive this efficiency exercise. Again, like work, we know what we want the systems to do, but certainly come January 1st, 2019, those technologies have not yet been created yet. In other words, they have to be caught up to what it is that our expectations. But certainly once those technological systems can perform the tasks that we wanted to do, to Mr. Clifford's point, the level of efficiency that the public will experience on the end user side of things will be greatly improved. Last week we talked about the advanced passenger bill and how that works hand in glove, if you will, with the Customs and Border Control bill. It will produce that kind of intelligence-led border control exercise. And what does that mean from the passenger standpoint? That means that not every single bag from every single passenger has to be checked. The advanced passenger bill, again, provides us the opportunity to gain advanced passenger information before that plane touches down in the Cayman Islands. In some cases, we know, in all cases, we know who the passengers are. Certainly the authorities will have an opportunity to do their operational role. Again, I don't presume to understand how they do what they do. I only concern myself with how well they do it. And they've been extremely successful here in the Cayman Islands. And certainly this technology will support the efficiencies and the level of border control protection that we can expect here in the Cayman Islands. Looking even further ahead to the future state in 2019, we talk about facial recognition. We've talked about fingerprint ID. In 2019, there are plans for an APHIS law, which will lead towards those automated passport kiosks that you see in most modern airports now. So instead of human lines, you can, scan your passport with a barcode and proceed even further along the queue process of Customs and Border Control. So that is where we hope to get to, but technology sits at the backbone of the system, which will produce these kind of efficiencies.
Okay, and as I note here, as you develop new systems and processes to drive the improvements, as far as enforcement and facilitation is concerned, then you're probably going to require further amendments to these new bills that are moving forward as well.
Yes. Absolutely. I mean, this entire process for us, whilst it has been a brand new exercise, and again, as I stated before, whilst we have the benefit of other larger jurisdictions, this is very much an ongoing or fluid exercise. We started a year and a half ago with changing small parts of the existing immigration law and customs law in order to get us to this stage. Now, once we go operational, there'll be even further changes, enhancements to make what that policy vision is, certainly working hand in hand with the operational side. How do we make this as seamless a process both for the administrators as well as the public who are the end users?
Okay, we've reached the top of the hour for 8 o'clock news, folks. When we return, we will open up the phone lines for you to ask questions, make comments in relation to Customs and Border Control in the Cayman Islands. If you are familiar with the bill itself, you may have some questions about the contents of that bill also. Please stay tuned for the record with Mr. Austin Harris and Mr. Charles Clifford. Will continue immediately after the 8 o'clock news.
Thank you, Mr. Connor. And studio time now by Price Right is 8 o'clock.
Price Right is Grand Cayman's warehouse shopping superstore, making your dollar go further with huge savings and no membership fees. Get more of the things you use every day at the right price. But it's not just grocery and health and beauty. Price Right has a full range of products from office to automotive, patio furnishings to kitchen appliances, and even electronics. And since warehouse prices mean savings for you, everything is priced right at Price Right, Grand Cayman's warehouse shopping superstore.
Access
your community. News and information. Radio Cayman is your choice, your voice for today's biggest news. Radio Cayman.
With your latest news, I'm Charles Fuller. The new governor heads to the Sister Islands on Friday. More from CIG TV's Donna Bush.
His Excellency, Mr. Martin Roper, arrived in Little Cayman along with Mrs. Roper and his office staff as they begin touring the Sister Islands and meeting the people. Stops on his familiarization tour on the littlest of the three Cayman Islands included meeting the team at the Central Caribbean Marine Institute, or CCMI. Police officers and staff from the Health Services Authority were also met on the tour. Now, the group then stopped by the Little Cayman School and then traveled on to the museum. The National Trust House as well was a stop for them. Well, the first part of the Little Cayman visit ended with a public welcome reception at the Little Cayman Command Center, where remarks were made by His Excellency and the District Commissioner, followed by the singing of the national song by students of the Little Cayman School.
Police are investigating a robbery at a fast food restaurant. Radio Cayman's April Cummings reports.
A man in a dark-colored hoodie with a cloth over his face walked into the Kentucky Fried Chicken on Shedden Road, brandishing a handgun on Friday evening just after 9 o'clock. Police say there were several employees and customers inside at the time of the robbery. Fortunately, no one was hurt and no shots were fired. The man took off with an undisclosed quantity of cash before police arrived on the scene. They're asking anyone with information to call the Georgetown Police Station. That number is 949-4222. If you'd like to make an anonymous tip to police, you can do that on their confidential tip line. The number is 949-7777 or on their website at rcips.ky. You can also make an anonymous tip through the Miami-based call center of Crime Stoppers. That number is 800-8477. April Cummings, Radio Cayman News.
And in other news,
it gives me great pleasure to present to you our 2019 Tourism Ambassador, Leanna Allen.
Clifton Hunter High School student Leanna Allen is the 2019 winner of the annual Tourism Speak-Off competition. The competition has been part of the DOT's Local Tourism Awareness Program since 2003. It's designed to develop local student knowledge of the importance of tourism in the Cayman Islands. Miss Allen will represent Cayman at the Caribbean Tourism Organization's annual conference next year. Audio courtesy of CIG TV. In regional news, voters in 2 Caribbean countries long independent from Britain will wrestle with thorny issues of fairness and sovereignty tomorrow as they go to the polls to decide whether to keep a London-based body as their final court of appeals or embrace a court much closer to home. The upcoming constitutional referendums in Antigua and Barbuda and in Grenada will gauge public consensus on officially adopting the Trinidadian-based Caribbean Court of Justice instead. They require a 2/3 majority to pass. The island states are small, with a combined population of about 200,000, and are best known for their sunny climates and sparkling beaches. That said, the court issue has raised deeply felt questions, not only of sovereignty, but of the impartiality and accessibility of justice to islanders. Now with a check of international news, here's the BBC, who will take us out of the newscast. I'm Carsley Fuller from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
BBC News with Justine Green. President Hassan Rouhani of Iran has said his country is in a state of economic war after the US reimposed sweeping sanctions on its oil and financial sectors. Mr. Rouhani said Iran would proudly bypass what he called the illegal and unjust sanctions. Meanwhile, Switzerland says it's in talks with both Washington and Tehran about how to prevent US sanctions from disrupting what it called humanitarian supplies. The Swiss government wants to ensure Iran can pay for food and medical products supplied by Swiss companies. The Turkish authorities say Saudi Arabia sent a toxicologist and a chemical expert to Istanbul days after the dissident journalist Jamal Khashoggi was killed at the Saudi consulate there. A Turkish official says Ankara believes the aim was to clean the premises before local police were admitted. In Geneva, Saudi Arabia has told a UN panel it's investigating the murder and those responsible will be prosecuted. Safety officials in Indonesia have revealed that the airspeed indicator on the plane that crashed last week had already been damaged for its final 4 flights. The information came from the plane's flight data recorder, which divers retrieved. All 189 people on board perished. Sri Lanka's parliamentary speaker has said he won't accept the former president Mahinda Rajapaksa as the new prime minister until Mr Rajapaksa can show he commands a majority in parliament. He strongly criticised President Sirisena for sacking Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe.
Access. Information. What's happening in your community? news and information, music and more. You can find us. www.radiocayman.gov.ky. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Radio Cayman is your choice, your voice for today's biggest news. Radio Cayman.
The Tuesday edition of The Business Buzz is brought to you by Grape Tree Cafe. Located in Buddentown, Grape Tree Cafe is a favorite among locals and visitors alike, serving up delicious Caribbean delights such as fried fish and fritters, fried breadfruit and chicharron, to name a few. Grape Tree Cafe has a reputation for good service, tasty dishes, and generous servings. Telephone 324-5860.
Did you know that recycling collection containers are located island-wide on Grand Cayman? The Department of Environmental Health's program is an integral part of DEH's waste management responsibility in the Cayman Islands. Start your recycling program at home today. Put your type 1 and 2 plastics in appropriate DEH recycling containers at all Foster's supermarkets, Kirk Market, or Hurley's Grand Harbor. Please keep the Cayman Islands clean, reduce, reuse, and recycle. For more information about recycling, go to www.deh.gov.ky.
In financial news, global shares were mixed today as European shares wavered following widespread losses for Asian benchmarks. Keeping score, Britain's FTSE 100 dropped 0.1% to 7,084, while the CAC 40 in France edged less than 0.0% higher to 5,103. Germany's DAX gained 0.1% to 11,524. Wall Street was positioned for slight losses. The Dow future contract fell 0.3% to 25,175. That for the S&P 500 eased 0.2% to 2,717. Looking at Asia's day, Japan's Nikkei 225 index fell 1.6% to 21,898, and South Korea's Kospi dropped 0.9% to 2,076. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index slipped 2.1% to 25,934. The Shanghai Composite Index shed 0.4% to 2,665. In energy, benchmark U.S. crude dropped 13 cents to $63.01 per barrel in electronic trading on the New York Mercantile Exchange. It lost 55 cents to $63.14 a barrel in New York on Friday. Brent crude used to price international oils was flat at $72.83 per barrel. The contract shed 6 cents to $72.83 in London. And in currencies, the dollar rose to 113.27 yen from 113.19. The euro slipped to 1.1382 from 1.1387.
On Friday, November the 9th at 12:15 p.m., you can hear another presentation in Radio Cayman CI Retro Talk Today special program series on Caymanian history, culture, and heritage, and its importance to the Cayman Islands community and its forward sail, future endeavors, and plans. With Remembrance Day and the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I observances coming up on the weekend, the focus will be on Caymanian involvement, sacrifice, and dedication to the defense and preservation of freedom and democracy. This special CI Retro Talk Today presentation is being brought to you by these fine sponsors. Four Winds Esso in West Bay, serving the West Bay community and the wider Cayman Islands community for over 6 decades. The Ministry of Culture, Flowers Bottled Water, the Cooler Bottled Water, and by the Appliance Doctors. CI Retro Talk Today special program presentation Friday at 12:15 p.m. on Radio Cayman.
The pirates having a party, a kind of a masquerade.
The Pirates Week National Festival is here. Don your best pirate costumes and get ready to rock the island with a jam-packed lineup of music, food, parades, fireworks, revelry, runs, song competitions, and underwater treasure hunt, the annual turtle release, children's fun day, beach cleanups, street dances, and so much more. Go to piratesweekfestival.com to see the full list of events. The Pirates Week Festival 2018. It'll be a year to remember. Sponsored by the Ministry of Tourism, the Department of Tourism, Cayman Airways, the TAV, Monster Media, and Radio Cayman.
The whole island is one big party, party, party.
Cruise tourism is a vital part of Cayman's economy. It is the government's responsibility to create an environment where our people can have an opportunity to grow and prosper today, tomorrow, and into the future. It is a myth that Cayman does not need cruise tourism. It is a fact that cruise passengers spend $200 million per year buying services from small businesses, tour operators, attractions, restaurants, and retail shops. Those funds stay right here, supporting our economy and communities. Support the pairs. Support our tourism.
Your weather update after 8 is brought to you by Brand Source Home Gallery, creating elegant bathrooms with European-style fixtures and fittings.
Brand Source Home Gallery has been appointed the exclusive Cayman supplier for Duravit bathroom products. Duravit is the leading international manufacturer of bathroom ceramics, tubs and showers, recognized around the world for beautiful, functional products. Winner of top industry awards, Duravit collaborates with leading European designers to provide the most elegant and innovative bath products. If you're ready to bring style, comfort and innovation to your bathroom, visit Brand Source Home Gallery to see the new Duravit showroom and meet the in-house bath designer. Whether you're planning a functional family bathroom or a personal spa retreat, browse the Duravit collection and be inspired. Brand Source Home Gallery, delivering a new standard in custom designed bathrooms. Brand Source Home Gallery, Dorsey Drive, Industrial Park.
Good morning. Time now for the latest weather report. Current temperature is 82 degrees. Relative humidity is 84%. Barometric pressure 29.95 inches and rising. The wind is east at 6 knots. Overnight low temperature was 77 degrees. Synopsis indicate moderate winds and seas expected over the next 24 hours as a ridge of high pressure lingers over the northwest Caribbean. Radar images show isolated showers in and around the Cayman area moving west. Now the forecast for the Cayman Islands for today and tonight, calling for partly cloudy skies with a 30% chance of afternoon showers for today. Temperatures will be in the upper 80s. Winds will be east at 10 to 15 knots and seas will be slight to moderate with wave heights of 2 to 4 feet. For tonight, you can expect temperatures to fall to the mid-70s and winds will be east to northeast 10 to 15 knots. High tide will be in just a few minutes at 8:18, low tide this afternoon at 2:24, and a high tide again tonight at 7:57. The sun will set this evening at 5:48 and will rise tomorrow morning at 6:29. And the outlook is calling for similar weather conditions through Wednesday morning.
Weather update after 8 is brought to you by Brand Source Home Gallery, creating elegant bathrooms with European-style fixtures and fittings.
Good morning once again, and time now to take a look what's happening traffic-wise. Busy traffic coming from the east. Traffic is steady as you head on down to Georgetown on the Linford Pearson Highway. Moderate flow of traffic coming off of Bobby Thompson Way. And traffic in and out of Georgetown on Shedden Road not looking too bad as traffic is flowing moderately. And a light to moderate traffic flow from the West Bay 4-way stop. And traffic in Cool Road is steady. Some sections are busier than others. So exercise some patience this morning as you're headed down to Georgetown. And traffic is moderate on Godfrey Dixon Way. Eastern Avenue not looking too bad as traffic is light to moderate. And Edward Street, light to moderate traffic flow. And on Huldah Avenue, traffic flowing moderately. And that's the very latest on your traffic. Join us again at about 10 minutes after 12 as we update you traffic-wise. Have a good morning and buckle up, Cayman Islands.
Did you know that you can download free hurricane preparedness brochures from the Water Authority's website? Visit us online at www.waterauthority.ky to learn more about how you can prevent damage and minimize danger in the event of a storm. Prepared, be aware, be safe. This hurricane preparedness tip is brought to you by Water Authority Cayman, suppliers of the world's most popular drink.
In local sports, the Pirates Week 5K walk run is Friday. Registration is open now at CaymanActive.com, and the first 100 registrants will get a free T-shirt with their $25 entry fee. Late on the day, registration is possible from 3:30 to 5 p.m. in front of Bar Crudo. The event starts at 5:30 p.m. in front of the South Terminal, with participants moving south on Harbor Drive to South Church Street to a turnaround point and back. Electronic chip timing by Race Caribbean will provide accurate times. For more information, you can call the Pirates Week office on 949-5078. In international sports, less than 2 weeks after its biggest loss under the new coach, Atletico Madrid will get a chance to make amends. The Spanish team will host Borussia Dortmund on Tuesday in the Champions League, 13 days after the Bundesliga's leaders beat Atletico 4-0 in Germany. Dortmund is unbeaten in 15 competitive games under coach Lucien Favre and can advance from Group A with another victory. An upcoming Bundesliga match against Bayern Munich on Saturday could provide some distraction, however. The 4-0 loss on October 24th equaled Atletico's worst result in the competition, while it was the team's first 4 goalless in 391 games with this coach in charge. Despite the result, Atletico can also advance to the knockout stage with a win if Monaco draws with Club Brugge in the earlier group game.
Initiating system.
For information that matters, For the Record with Orrett Connor continues right now on Radio Cayman.
Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. I'm your host, Orrett Connor, and in the studio with me this morning, we have MLA and Councillor Mr. Austin Harris and the Collector of Customs, Mr. Charles Clifford. We have one caller, but before we go to that caller, I'll take things in the order as they come, and we received a WhatsApp message from one of our listeners, and it reads, "Good morning, Mr. Connor, Councillor Harris, and Mr. Clifford. It is very good listening to your discussion on a department close to our hearts, Customs and Border Control. Having the pleasure of listening to Caymanian and visitors at Miami International Airport speak of the welcome professional attitude given by customs officers as they assisted with customs and immigration forms as we sat leisurely waiting to check in. Not only was it welcoming to hear the Caymanian voices, but I especially remember the name of one, Mr. West. Very professional. Thanks for the improvements you are making to Customs and Border Control. It is very welcome."
That's excellent.
Thank you very much, Mr. Connor. Thank you for reading that.
Sure.
That is a reference to our Miami Fast Track program.
Yes.
And a specific reference to Assistant Collector Philip West. And I want to commend him for his conduct, and certainly that message is well deserved.
Absolutely, and certainly, again, from the passenger perspective, I think it speaks to what it is that we're trying to achieve, and I want to thank that listener for sharing their experience because it's very helpful and informative to us, and encouraging as well,
Certainly
that we're
is.
heading in the right direction.
Certainly is. Let's go to the caller. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, Mr. Steve. Hi, Mr. Clifford.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
I have 2 questions which I think are very important regarding immigration that the people in Cayman would like to know. I called the other day to establish that I cannot marry 2 women. It's not against the law here, right? And now, one question is, if I take action against the government on the grounds of religious freedom, I'm a Muslim and allowed a few wives, and part of the Bible against human nature and all that, can I take action against the government in the courts? Can the courts give me permission, or does it have to go to the Legislative Assembly?
Well,
that's the first question.
Well, if I could... Okay, go ahead.
Uh-huh.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead. He'll answer both after.
Yeah, the second question is, if the courts cannot give me permission, how is it that a couple of lesbians, homosexuals, queer, whatever you call them, they can take action against the government for them to get married? If it's against the law for straight religious men, why is the law different for homosexuals? Okay? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, caller.
If I could just answer the first
Sure,
one.
sure.
Of course, anyone can take action against the government if they feel aggrieved by a particular decision. Whether the person will succeed in court is another matter. We can't argue hypotheticals here on the radio. But certainly individuals are entitled, pardon me, to take action against the government if they feel aggrieved by a particular decision. The second question, I don't know if Mr. Harris would like to address that one.
Yeah, no, certainly. I mean, being a non-lawyer in the room, and again, the caller raised his point last week whilst we were on the air, whilst we have a Bill of Rights that protects an individual's right to religion, certainly there are obviously restrictions applicable to that same Bill of Rights, and those are contained in the Constitution, respective to how marriage is defined between a man and a woman. That relates, of course, to the gay marriage petition that is currently working its way through the courts. I think in many cases the courts have a very difficult role to play in the balancing act, both in terms of representing an individual's individual human rights, but also recognizing the restrictions and or way of life that is defined by the culture, which of course our Constitution seeks to encapsulate. So I think really that's the best way I can even attempt to answer that caller's question.
Okay. Back onto the discussion at hand. In terms of numbers, Mr. Clifford, when the two agencies or two entities are combined, what staffing figures are we looking at?
So we're looking at a head count of approximately 260 employees. So that would include the immigration officers who are currently engaged in border control at immigration, all of the customs officers, and the customs and immigration officers in the sister islands as well. So approximately 260.
And there's no anticipation of any loss of jobs with this whole, with these changes?
No, absolutely not. I know the government gave an undertaking at the very beginning of this process that no one would lose their jobs as a result of this.
Yes.
So this is not about a reduction in headcount. This is not about a reduction in the budget. This is about being more effective and more efficient with border control in the Cayman Islands.
Absolutely. I want to again accentuate that point that it is not planned and it is not the government position that any customs officer and immigration officer should lose their job as a result of this exercise, but quite to the contrary. We talked about the cross-training benefits that have been ongoing. The first class, I think we graduated 10 classmates in September. Again, it was the first cross-training exercise was more of a how best to configure these classes going forward. I think it was a very useful learning exercise as well as being very successful. But customs and immigration officers who may be on the fence, a little resistant to the change that is coming, should not look at this as a negative, but instead of very much a positive. They will have the opportunity to gain further valuable knowledge and experience that will only serve to enhance their personal development. For officers, young or old, certainly wanting to still climb that corporate ladder, if you will, it will better prepare them for positions of greater responsibility. For those perhaps who have spent a great deal of time, a number of years in their current capacity, it would allow them to widen their scope, to take on new challenges, to experience new areas of border control and security in this ever-changing world. And I think it's really an exciting time for everyone involved in the organization. And I would encourage persons to not listen or particularly not believe any rhetoric that may be shared in the public domain about this merger, but quite to the contrary. It is a very exciting time, and I think the country, as well as the officers on those front lines, those very important officers doing some very important work, should be excited about this exercise.
Okay.
If I could just add to that, Mr. Connor, over the course of the last 2 weeks, I hosted 12 staff forums, assisted by the Acting Chief Immigration Officer, Bruce Smith. And I have to say that the feedback and the questions and comments at those forums were very positive. We were able to address any of the concerns that staff had. But generally speaking, staff seem to have embraced the opportunity for change. I think it's important that they do that, because if we do a survey of most government and private sector organizations, that's been very successful. we will see that those are not organizations who were prepared to rest on their laurels. They knew that they had to change. They have to constantly change in order to stay ahead of the game. And so it's very important that people understand that. One of the comments I made in relation to that during the staff forums was that if you think about where we were just maybe 10 years ago, if I was sitting in that same staff forum briefing staff, everyone in that room had a BlackBerry. So I said to them, who has a BlackBerry in this room today? No one, right? Uh-huh. And the reason for that was BlackBerry didn't stay on top of the game. And so what happened? They were wiped out by iPhones and Samsung and those types of brands. So I used an example like that to demonstrate that we need to embrace change, because technology is moving very rapidly. And if we don't embrace change, we're going to be left behind. And we're going to become very, very inefficient. And I think everyone understands that now. And people see the opportunities ahead for advancement. And so I think that's why they've embraced the change. And of course, you will have some elements who are going to continue to resist change, and we just have to continue to try to help them understand why it's necessary. And hopefully they too will embrace the change.
Yeah. And another example that I would use, I went to immigration 11 years after the immigration law came into effect in 1972. Mm-hmm. I joined immigration in 1983. At that time, when it came to monitoring whether or not a person had left the jurisdiction, when you arrived, you filled out that duplicate form, immigration form. The white one was retained by immigration. The pink one was given to the passenger. That passenger had to surrender that pink one when they were leaving. The immigration process to determine whether or not a person had left was you retain that white one, you put it into a slot where you had all of your arrivals by date. Mm-hmm. When the person departed, you could look on that pink form and you saw when they arrived. You go to that slot, you find that person's card, you what we call marry them up at that point in time, and you were able to determine that the person had left. That was the overstairs list. Yes. So anything left in that box, not married up, those boxes not married up, those were the overstairs. Right. Then in 1984, 85, we got a computerized system, and it has moved further and further, from there. But my question, and I'd like you to comment on this, has to do with no matter where you travel, you have the requisite visa, all of your documentation is in order, but there is still that little sense of nervousness when you get to the control, simply because you know at the end of the day that immigration or customs officer has the authority, the power to refuse you entry if necessary. How is the new system going to allay those fears and give that comfort and that sense of ease that WhatsApp message that we received earlier about Miami International and the experience there? How can we continue that good experience for the traveling public?
Well, I mean, the message I've always delivered to my officers is that it is entirely possible and in fact desirable that we can deliver excellent customer service while at the same time being effective border control officers. So we've proven that we can do that, and there's no reason why we can't continue to do that. The Advanced Passenger Information law that was passed that Mr. Harris made reference to earlier, that will give us the type of information that we need so that before an aircraft touches down here or before a vessel arrives, we should have a fairly good idea of who it is on board that aircraft that we need to take a second look at. We know that the majority of passengers coming on the majority of flights are innocent people, are not people that we need to waste time processing and searching their bags. So I say all of that to say that even though we're going to have that type of technology available to us that will allow us to do that once we complete this transition, the need for us to have officers in the hall roving and looking for things that the technology may have missed, because the technology is not perfect, right? So we're going to still have to have that ability to say, okay, there's something that doesn't look right here that we need to take a second look at. But those should not be frequent occurrences. And so you're going to see that there'll be an improvement over time with the amount of time that it would take you to be processed through our controls, unless, of course, as I indicated earlier, you're selected for a secondary examination. In that case, then that's fairly bad news because it's going to be a much longer process at that stage. Yeah.
Well, certainly to your point, and to complement what Mr. Clifford said, you know, in the past year and a half, I've done my own share of traveling, mostly, almost entirely, for training purposes to be better and able to do my job. But one of the things that I always notice, because I agree with you, there's always that sense of trepidation when approaching the Customs and Border Control counter. And what doesn't help that sense of unease is the manner in which the service is delivered. Yes. In the U.S. and in the U.K., it's very staunch-looking Customs and Border Control officers who make it very abundantly clear that they're not your friend, and just in their mannerisms and otherwise. And it's one of the other reasons I enjoy coming back home. Because certainly I feel I'm home when I get to Miami International and I come to my counter, my airline counter. I feel closer to home when I get off the plane, and it is how you deliver that service, that authority, but with a smile. And certainly Customs and Border Control officers, customs officers, immigration officers in Cayman, they have a job to do. And I don't think I would ever want to remove that degree of trepidation from passengers saying, ooh, have I checked everything? Is my paperwork in order? Because that's a good thing. They're self-policing themselves so that our officers don't have to do it. But you don't have to feel as if, you're going into a concentration camp just to travel to, another jurisdiction. And therefore that customer delivery, that customer service, how you do your job, how you interact with the public, I think speaks volumes to the overall service. And I think here in the Cayman Islands, actually I don't think, in my experience, I know we do it better than most jurisdictions in which I've traveled to. And I'm quite proud of that.
Right. Can I just add something to that?
Yes, you can. We're going to go to a commercial break, but I'll give you a chance to.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So I just wanted to say quickly that in relation to the strategy that I mentioned, that it is possible to deliver excellent customer service and be effective border control officers. It is very important that we recognize that, because we're looking at a country that its economy is supported by the tourism industry, at least 50% of the economy. So we need to recognize that, and the message that I've consistently delivered, particularly at graduation ceremonies for new recruits, is that if that industry falters and tourism begins to decline, we won't need as many customs and immigration officers as we currently have. We won't need as many civil servants as we currently have. So it is important for everybody in this equation to understand the connection between the success of those industries and our jobs.
Yeah. Yes. That's very, very important. I'm glad you pointed that out, Mr. Clifford. We're going to take a commercial break. When we return, the conversation with Collector of Customs, Mr. Charles Clifford, and MLA and Councillor, Mr. Austin Harris, will continue.
You remember the sale at Vant Motors?
Yeah, the Your Sale, Your Choice, the one where you can get cash back or can put the savings to extend the warranty or upgrade features?
Yes, it's still going on, but now you can get $8,000 off a new Ford Ranger truck. $8,000, you know?
You for real?
Come see for yourself. While they still have so much to choose from, save big during Your Sale, Your Choice at Vant Motors. With almost every vehicle on sale, you decide whether to get your dream ride at its lowest price. Take cash back, add years to the warranty or service plan. Choose an add-on or mix your options. Your sale, your choice, because you know what you need, and Vant Motors will help you drive it home. Vant Motors on Walkers Road. A trip to New York City is the experience of a lifetime. Starting this December, Cayman Airways will be offering daily non-stop flights from Grand Cayman to New York City. That's right, Cayman Airways is going daily to New York City starting this December. Stroll through Central Park or take in the bright lights of Times Square, enjoy a Broadway show, or visit museums, the Empire State Building, and so much more. Whether you're visiting for business or pleasure, you'll fall in love with New York City. And daily non-stop flights from Grand Cayman aboard Cayman Airways starting this December. For details and to book, call Cayman Airways reservations at 949-2311. Contact a travel agent or visit CaymanAirways.com.
Thousands of Caymanians work in our cruise tourism industry. It is a myth that Cayman does not need cruise tourism. It is a fact that 4,500 Caymanians work in this industry today as taxi and tour operators, boat captains and crew, restaurateurs, retailers, water sports operators, and ambassadors at our attractions. If our cruise tourism industry is half of what it is today, what are we going to do with our people, the thousands of unemployed Caymanians? Support the peers, support our tourism.
System 1 loaded.
1-800-534-8255. What is on your mind when it comes to the government, independence, and the opposition? Issues that matter to you. 1-800-534-8255. Waiting to hear from you. For the Record, with your host, Orrett Connor.
Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. It is my pleasure to have in the studio with me this morning Collector of Customs, Mr. Charles Clifford, and also MLA and Councillor Mr. Austin Harris. We're discussing the draft Customs and Border Control Bill 2018, which will be presented to the Legislative Assembly when the meeting starts on the 14th of this month. Meanwhile, we're talking not only about the contents of that draft bill, but also other issues as they relate to customs and border control. Two things I'd like us to touch on, gentlemen. One has to do with the need or no need to clear an immigration officer when you're now departing, with the airlines processing, taking those cards and everything. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Okay, if I can address that. The passengers, especially people who travel frequently, would note that there are no longer any immigration controls for outgoing passengers. And the reason for that is that the information that immigration would typically need is now made available to them through the airlines electronically. So there's no need for them to have that information, to have that checkpoint in place any longer. If there's a need for them to intercept someone, they have that information in advance and can do so at the appropriate point when the individual is going through those controls at the security checkpoints. So that's one issue. The second issue I wanted to also mention is the customs declaration process.
Yes.
There was a change in the policy a few months back where if you're within your allowance, you're no longer required to fill out a customs declaration form. Now, it could be that based on observation, an officer might determine that you're not being honest about that, in which case that officer would then be entitled to refer you to secondary for a more thorough examination. But if the officer has no concerns, then you don't need to, if you're within your allowances, you don't need to fill out that form, and you can proceed to our green channel and proceed out. The other point is the increase in the duty-free allowance. Yes. I don't know if Mr. Harris wanted to touch on that. Or you?
Yeah, no, certainly. We're excited to be able to roll out the increase on the duty allowance, which I believe goes into implementation this month, November 1st.
Yeah.
Again, grateful to Mr. Clifford pointing out the exercise that if persons are within that limit, then again they don't need to fill out the requisite or the previously requisite customs duty information forms, which again will work towards improving efficiencies. The outgoing immigration process again, and I recently experienced this as well. Again, it greatly reduces the lines that we've experienced at the airports, improving the efficiency, improving the passenger travel experience overall. And I think we are accomplishing that through small incremental steps. And again, from the end user's perspective, I think they are the ones who are going to notice the changes in efficiency most notably and most directly. And hopefully that will improve their experience, as we learned from at least one listener this morning.
Okay. If I could just say, OC, that anytime we have a change in policy like this, there are always going to be some teething problems. So we've had some issues with the first policy that I mentioned, which is the need to not fill out the customs declaration form if you're within your allowances. So even though we've communicated this policy change, and it's also reflected now on the new customs declaration card, some airlines have not been consistent in the way that they've implemented it. So in many instances, we've had airlines telling passengers, no, you still have to fill out the customs declaration form, whether you have goods to declare or not. So that's created somewhat of a problem. There's also been a few problems on our end, and I want to apologize for that, where there's been some inconsistency. But these are teething problems. Eventually, we won't have these issues to talk about. But as I said, with any change in policy, you're going to have a few issues as you begin to implement them. And so we've seen that. But even before we had that policy change, we had some issues with some of the airlines, in that some airlines were telling passengers you didn't need to fill out forms at all. And so when they got into our hall, then we had to go through that process, which delayed the passengers. So we've also, over the years, we've had a few issues with this type of stuff. But I think the communication is getting better. And with IATA being involved, that is the International Airline Travelers Association, I think that's the correct thing. With them being involved, they're also driving the message and the messaging and the communications to the various corporate offices of the airlines serving the Cayman Islands. So that helps.
Okay. Now, two other observations. Some persons are questioning where will passport issuance, passport office fall into this new equation. And the other area some people have expressed opinions on has to do with the revenue collection side of customs, whether or not that should be hived off to another area so that Customs and Border Control can concentrate simply on those issues rather than the revenue collection as well.
Well, certainly I will save the question on revenue as it relates to customs to Mr. Clifford to answer from an operational standpoint. But as it relates to the passports and the passport office, whilst, again, our government, my government, the unity government, would very much like to have passports all under a single umbrella, but we recognize the complications, particularly in terms of our relationship with the United Kingdom vis-a-vis the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. As it presently stands, and certainly looking forward to at least the medium term, that would remain a separate department, answerable, of course, to the governor, but working in collaboration with the ministry. It will not form part of the Customs and Border Control umbrella. The processes in which persons go about accessing those services will remain the same. I certainly want to congratulate the Passport Office for the fantastic work they do in terms of efficiency. It's very straightforward. Again, some changes with regards to the US and the UK systems of ESTA and otherwise make it really painless. Some things you can get from the Passport Office vis-a-vis the forms and the over-the-counter exercises. Most things they'll give you an online address and you do it yourselves. Right. But certainly that will remain the same, at least looking forward into the medium term. But we recognize some of the concerns from the general public about bringing that service, if you will, back home, being able to process our own passports. What I can say is that we're working towards that, but we're not quite there yet.
And on the revenue side, there was a discussion very early in this process, Mr. Connor, that perhaps we should look at separating revenue. But what we advised the government, we had quite an extensive discussion around this issue, is that when you consider that I think 93% of what we consume in Cayman is imported, therein lies the problem and the potential threat to national security and for people to bring in contraband through those various packages, containers, etc. And so it is difficult to separate that function from border control because it is not just a revenue collection function. What we do during that process is to examine documents and to examine other things which would tell us whether or not this is a high-risk package or a high-risk container that we need to look at. So were we to separate the two, we could inadvertently create a void in the border control strategy where goods, whether those are goods in a container or in individual packages, could be inadvertently released before we had an opportunity to inspect them if we needed to do so. So there's a very close connection between the two, and it would not be advisable to separate them at any point.
Okay, good point for us.
I just want to make a quick correction as it relates to the Passport Office in terms of the chain of command. The chain of command for the Passport Office will actually not report to the governor, but will report to the Chief Officer of the Ministry of Human Resources Immigration. That is the line of command. The governor has no role in the reporting line to the Passport Office itself.
Right.
Just want to make that quick. But
the whole process of naturalization and registration would still fall under the Governor's Office based on the British Nationality Act.
Correct, as it presently stands today.
Excellent point for us to take a commercial break. Folks, please stay tuned. For the record, we'll be back shortly.
Oh, my acid reflux is killing me.
Why don't you get something from the grocery store?
I need something better than any generic quick fix.
You should go to West Bay Pharmacy and have a brief consultation with the pharmacist. I went in last week and within minutes I was back in the car and on the road. And you know what? No more acid reflux.
How long did it take you?
Minutes. Here, give them a call at 945-0777.
West Bay Pharmacy is just around the corner with everything you need in the hours you need it. Visit us today for fast, efficient, and professional service. We are here as a team to assist you while taking care of your health. Call us today or visit our website at caymanpharmacy.com.
Not all insurance is created equal, but who has the time to shop around? Take the guesswork out of your insurance coverage with Fidelity Insurance Brokers. Let us match you with the best coverage to suit your needs at a price to suit your wallet. Plus, get superior customer service from dedicated claims professionals to ensure speedy claims processing. Get your insurance through Fidelity Insurance Brokers. Call us today at 949-7822 for a free quote. Fidelity, we're good for you.
At Kirk's Home Center, we can make your life much better. We got it all together. We got a great deal in store for you. From cookware to stereos, from power tools to plumbing supplies. Yeah, we got the best goods with the best price and a service to make you smile. At Kirk's Home Center, we got a great deal in store for you.
Initiating system.
For information that matter. For the record with Orrett Connor continues right now on Radio Cayman.
Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. In the studio with me this morning, MLA and Councillor Mr. Austin Harris and Collector of Customs Mr. Charles Clifford. We're discussing the Draft Customs and Border Control Bill 2018, which will be debated in the Legislative Assembly sometime after the 14th of this month when the Legislative Assembly meets. So that discussion is taking place with the two gentlemen, and I'm going to throw the mic back over to Mr. Harris at this point in time.
Indeed. Again, Osi, it's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to talk about the progress that we're making within the Ministry of Human Resources and Immigration. We're excited to bring the Customs and Border Control Bill 2018, which again will largely complete the legal framework required to make this new department a reality, to give the necessary powers to the Director, Mr. Clifford, to my left, and enable his unit to function properly, efficiently, and of course for the benefit of the general public. I just want to speak perhaps generally in terms of how this plays into what the Government of National Unity, committed to in a strategic policy statement just over a year ago in August 2017. We laid out 8 strategic goals for our administration. Strategic goal number 4 was reducing crime and the fear of crime. As it presently stands right now, the Cayman Islands is a relatively safe place in the Caribbean region with a low incidence of violent crime and crimes affecting tourists. The U.S. State Department Travel Advisories has listed the Cayman Islands at level 1, which is, of course, the lowest level of advisory, so travelers can exercise normal procedures and not expect anything untoward or exciting to ruin their travel experience. Mm-hmm. From a standpoint of protecting our borders and therefore protecting our people, again, this Customs and Border Control Bill is another important step in that direction. We've established the new Customs and Border Control Department. We've appointed Mr. Clifford as its director, which is taking security at the airport and the seaport to a world-class level. The new agency, again, will be charged with upholding the law on customs duty, landing, entry, asylum, and otherwise border control. We have compounded that or enhanced that with the Cayman Islands Coast Guard, which was formed with the appointment of 2 very capable Caymanians as Commander Robert Scotland and Lieutenant Leo Anglin. Both of these entities, both the Coast Guard and the Customs and Border Control, will work together to make our islands even safer. It will stem the flow of drugs, which we have started to see great successes on. I'll tell you. We have also seen successes in terms of stemming the flow of illegal firearms. We've continued to deal with the flow of illegal immigrants, but that has also been reduced as a result of these exercises. And the public can expect more of the same, more of these improvements in all of these areas. And this is your national unity government fulfilling a promise it made some 14 months ago in August 2017. And I'm happy to see, first of all, I'm happy in the first instance to be a part of a government that seeks to keep its word. We talk about politics, and we can say anything on a manifesto, and then that changes throughout the 4-year term. But the manifestos that each of our government representatives made post-election, and the commitment that we committed ourselves to in the strategic policy statement, has been our guiding principle, and we're working towards the fulfillment of each and every one of those goals. And I think today, whilst again, there are a few bumps in the road. There are instances where perhaps we don't get it right. I'm confident that we get it more right than wrong. And in particular to border control, this merger will strengthen our uniform branches here in the Cayman Islands. The combination of customs and immigration should be seen as a good thing, but certainly it will enhance the level of security that we offer to both our citizens, residents, and our tourist visitors that come here. So I'm very encouraged about where we are. And as we go to the House on the 14th of November, it'll get us closer to achieving those goals and ambitions set by the government back in August of last year.
Mr. Clifford, how, in terms of the enhanced, expanded surroundings that you now have at the airport, how will that assist you in accomplishing a lot of the things that you want to accomplish from a technological standpoint, from an operational standpoint?
Well, it assists us greatly because the additional space, of course, gives us additional opportunities to talk about and to embrace the technology that you mentioned earlier. So I think you will see that over time, again, passenger flows will become more efficient. This merger, at the end of the day, is about us being more effective at border control in the Cayman Islands. As I've said to my staff in all of the staff meetings that I've held, and even in welcoming our new recruits recently, this is a very, very exciting time for customs and immigration, which will become one. Very exciting time for border control in the Cayman Islands. I'm certainly honored to be the leader of this organization. And there'll be many opportunities for advancement. There'll be many training opportunities. So the opportunities are going to be multiplied compared to what they were before. So from that point of view, I think there's every reason to be positive about this. This is an opportunity for us to take border control really to the world-class level in the Cayman Islands. And I want to say today what I said to my staff in the various staff meetings. This isn't about me or about the government. This really is about making the Cayman Islands a very safe place, ensuring that we remain safe because of the same industry that I mentioned earlier, tourism, and of course financial services. And I underscored that by saying that we inherited from our parents a very safe and prosperous country, and we have an obligation to pass that on to our children and grandchildren. And that's what this is all about, Mr. Connor. At the end of the day, it boils down to that. And we have to do our part, each one of us. This is a team effort to make that happen.
Now, I know when we talk about ports of entry, most people focus on the airport side of things, but we also have our seaports as well. And I mentioned that to run the risk of someone calling in talking about the cruise berthing facility. but let's talk about the procedures on the seaport side of things as well.
Right. So we process cruise passengers differently than we do with airline passengers, and this is the way that most countries do it, because you can't process the volumes that come off of cruise ships in the same way that you would do in relation to airline passengers. So what we're looking at there, though, is when we talk about this transition to the intelligence-led risk management approach, that applies across the board. So it will apply to to the seaport as well. And we recognize that we do need to supplement our resources at the seaport. But again, when we talk about opportunities, this merger gives us that, because now what we have post-January 1 is Immigration and Customs coming together as one agency. So in effect, what that does is double up the numbers automatically in various sections, including the seaport, and then allows us to examine how we can be more efficient with our operational capability at the various checkpoints.
And again, to complement that, as I stated before, technology will underpin this efficiency exercise that we are engaged in right now. And certainly we have we have what we desire from the system. We know what we want our systems to tell us. We know what user-friendly information we can acquire from our technological systems. We know what information we can extrapolate and use in real time, and how that will help officers, both in terms of doing their day-to-day job, but also, more importantly, protecting our borders. So I think the exercise that is presently underway as it relates to the CBC bill, the exercise of getting us to January 1st and the merger, but certainly the tying in of the technologies that will support this intelligence-based way of protecting our borders will have cross-benefit both in the airport and the seaport, and will only improve the passenger experiences on both sides.
Okay, we have about 2 more minutes. We can continue to talk before 9 o'clock hit news.
Well, I just want to thank you, Mr. O.C., for the opportunity again to be on your program. I think this program is valuable to the listening audience. Certainly it is valuable to my government of national unity, and we continue to make our regular pledge and commitment to be with you every Monday to talk about initiatives that are important to the country from the government's perspective. Again, to the listening audience, we will be returning to the Legislative Assembly on the 14th of November, and we will be bringing a number of key pieces of legislation: the Immigration Transition Bill, the Customs and Border Control Bill, the Advanced Passenger Bill. We will also be bringing amendments to the stamp duty law and the gambling law, all of which has been discussed in the public domain, and we will continue to provide this information. My role, again, is primarily to talk about what is coming up ahead of time, and then when it's all said and done, when the dust has settled after the Legislative Assembly, myself and my colleagues in the government will also return to your program to talk about what has been achieved. And this is the government's commitment to transparency and accountability in all that we say and that we do, but also keep the public informed of the good work that is being done on their behalf. And it is a pleasure to be able to do that on this program. It's a pleasure to be on the airwaves. It's a pleasure to have this show both aired on the air, aired online, aired on TV. I mean, really, there's no opportunity to miss On the Record with Orrett Connor. So this is definitely the best talk show in town if you want to get your message across. And I just want to thank you for this opportunity. I want to thank Mr. Clifford for his professionalism. I want to thank him for his experience and his dedication to what the government policy has been. I want to thank him for his honesty. We've had discussions where the government policy led us in one direction, but Mr. Clifford said, "Listen, I see what you want to achieve, but I see where that is fraught with problems. Let's consider this." And that kind of approach is exactly what we're looking for in our teammates. And that is certainly what Mr. Clifford is in the grand scheme of things. He's a teammate. We're all heading in the same direction, but he is the one who's been selected to lead this organization. I could not be any happier in that selection. And I know with his assistance, together with his fine officers, there's only one option, and that's success for us.
Okay, we're going to go to headline news. When we return, we want to give Mr. Clifford an opportunity for some closing comments and again to speak about his expectations for his organization going forward and his enthusiasm towards brighter and better future in that area as well. Please stay tuned for the record. We'll be back shortly.
89.9 Radio Cayman helps you to weather the storm during this hurricane season.
One of the most crucial elements of hurricane preparedness is storm awareness. During the season, it is of utmost importance to pay attention to the latest local weather forecast, as hurricanes do not suddenly form or strike. There are various methods of advanced notification. Utilizing such may be the difference between a favorable outcome and disaster. Both television and radio serve as excellent mediums with up-to-the-minute storm path information in the wake of a hurricane. Another method of tracking a hurricane may be only arm's length away. Your smartphone or tablet can be your most valuable tool before, during, and after a storm, providing countless numbers of apps with crucial hurricane information. Many apps allow you to track storms with moving radar and satellite imagery, plus offer alerts, current conditions, forecasts, advisories, and even video.
This hurricane preparedness tip was brought to you by your community radio station, Radio Cayman 89.9 FM.
Follow Radio Cayman on Twitter. All the latest information, breaking news, community events, and more. Follow us at twitter.com/Radio Cayman.
Radio Cayman.
Radio Cayman's newsroom. These are the biggest stories right now.
A team of the Health Services Authority undergoes an intensive 3-day fraud training program organized by KPMG. The workshop covered areas such as fraud risk management and assessment, procurement fraud, asset misappropriation, organizational ethics, implementation of an effective whistleblowing program, and detecting and deterring conflicts of interest. In international news, Iran's President Hassan Rouhani has vowed to break sanctions reimposed by the U.S. targeting core parts of the economy. The Trump administration is restoring all sanctions lifted under the 2015 nuclear deal in a bid to pressure Iran. They hit oil exports, shipping, and banks and make it difficult to do business with the oil-rich nation. And the UK government has been warned to stick to its commitment to avoid a hard border between Northern Ireland and the Republic. Irish Foreign Minister Simon Coveney has said a time-limited arrangement, or one that could be unilaterally ended by the UK, would never get EU backing. The border issue is the main barrier to progress between the two sides. Those are your headlines. I'm Karsley Fuller.
Radio Cayman, the voice of the Cayman Islands.
What's happening in your community? News and information, music and more. You can find us. www.radiocayman.gov.ky. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Radio Cayman is your choice, your voice for today's biggest news. Radio Cayman.
Initiating system.
For information that matter. For the record. With Orrett Connor. Continues right now on Radio Cayman.
Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. We're on the last leg of our discussion with MLA and Councillor Mr. Austin Harris and the Collector of Customs, Mr. Charles Clifford. When they depart, we will open the phone. Well, the phone lines have been open all along, but I will continue. The show will continue. And we will have the phone lines open. I will talk about several different topics. Hopefully, something will strike a nerve somewhere and get people all riled up to call in. But remember, you won't have a whole lot of time afterwards to call in, because it'll probably be no more than about a 15-minute break after that. One of our listeners says, "Congrats, Chucky. You make the Cayman Islands high school class of 1980 so very proud." They tell giving out your numbers now in terms of when you graduated. God bless you moving forward.
All right,
Mr. Clifford, your vision of the future.
Well, I want to thank that classmate for sending that in. Thank you very much, Mr. Connor, and thank you for having us on this morning. I want to thank the listeners and those watching on television. I know we haven't had many calls, but I know I've received a lot of messages. I know people are listening. People are listening.
Yes.
So thank you very much for that. And moving forward, as I said, this is a very exciting time for the Customs and Border Control Agency and for border control generally in the Cayman Islands. We're moving to embrace technology, to fully embrace technology for all of the reasons that I mentioned earlier. And there are great things ahead for us on the border control front. We expect to become a lot more efficient as a result of this merger. So that will ensure that our country remains safe by keeping out the contraband, whether that's in the form of drugs or firearms. Or, of course, we in this particular era, we also need to be concerned about terrorism, because we can't be complacent about that. As a region, we need to be always mindful of that. We've had attacks at resorts in other parts of the world, and so if we become complacent, then that in itself represents a risk, and we shouldn't allow that to happen. So we need to consider things such as that as well. I believe that, as I said earlier, there are many opportunities ahead for the organisation and for the officers that will staff it. I can assure you, Mr. Connor, that we have very, very dedicated officers in the Customs Department and in the Immigration Department. And as we come together, come January the 1st, I expect that level of dedication will continue and the camaraderie will be there. We already operate really closely in terms of joint operations with respect to border control. So essentially what we're doing is going to continue doing what we're doing, but making significant advancements in the future, operating under one brand with one uniform. And we have engaged our staff. As I mentioned earlier, we've had multiple staff forums to talk about the issues, to address concerns, to answer questions. But at this point in time now, we're moving the communication strategy to a different level in terms of engaging the public in forums such as this one. And we expect that a lot more of that will continue between now and the end of the year, so that the public can be aware of what's taking place and will know what to expect come January the 1st. But I want to underscore the point, as I did in all of the staff forums that I hosted, that again, this is a multi-year project. It isn't going to be completed on January the 1st. January the 1st really is the beginning of the merger. It will take several years to get everything completed, as it did, or as it has done in other jurisdictions. I think in the United States, they're now in year 13 of their merger, and they're just about there in terms of completion. In the United Kingdom, I believe they're in year 8 or 9, and they've made some changes during that process. We think we can probably complete ours within 4 to 5 years in the Cayman Islands. But during that process, there will be a tremendous amount of change, a lot of efficiencies that will benefit honest passengers, and more problems ahead for those who are not honest, because they can expect much more robust involvement from the Customs and Border Control Unit.
Because you have more opportunities to focus on,
absolutely,
on specifically.
Absolutely.
On
and the training and equipment will prepare us for that, along with the Advanced Passenger Information Law that's now in effect. That's been passed by the Legislative Assembly. Not yet in effect, but should come into effect soon. So we're going to have all of the tools that we need for us to become more efficient at the border. And as I said earlier, I'm looking forward to leading this organization into the future. Succession planning is an important part of this too, because as you know, I have been in the government service for some time now.
And we know when you graduated.
And you now know when I graduated. But for more reasons than that, I mean, during my entire career, I've always focused on succession planning, because I think that is critically important to continue to. And so it won't be any different now. But we need to ensure that in the future, we have the right managers coming up through the organization to lead it into the future.
Okay, we have one caller. Let's go to the phone lines. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning, Mr. O.C.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm fine, and good morning to Mr. Harris.
Good morning.
Councillor, and good morning to Mr. Clifford.
Good morning, Dr. Hatfield.
I think you said you didn't have many calls, but I would not have let this opportunity without making a call. I'm happy to see that it took something 18 years now, because the border control was first mentioned by myself and Robert Borden when we were standing for election in 2000, and I have been touting it ever since. And I'm so happy to see that at least I lived to see one of the things that I was passionate about came to fruition. The next point that I would like to make is, Mr. Harris, you are the spokesman for the government, the whip.
Yes, sir.
For the unit of government, and so you are the spokesman for all the bills and all the things coming before the Legislative Assembly.
Yes, sir.
I wonder if you could inform us as to when the Cabinet intends to put into force the Standards and Public Life Bill. under Section 117 of the Constitution. It has been now passed in the Legislative Assembly for some years now, and all it has to remain now is to get Cabinet's okay to put it forward. And also Section 119, the advisory district councils. There's a law now that the government says that they do not agree with some of the provisions of the law. I wonder if you can inform us if the government is working on an amendment, or if the government is working on a new law, and when can we expect those to be? Because it seems to me that those are two of the main organs, the main organs to support our constitutional democratic system. And I've listened.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you very much, Doc.
Thank you very much, Dr. McField. Always appreciate your comments, and in particular your on-point questions. Certainly, I'll take the last question first, and that is as it relates to the advisory district councils. As you and Mr. Osei has unlikely heard already, the government and the cabinet in particular are looking at making a few minor constitutional improvements, and amongst them will be improvements in particular to the advisory district councils. When the Constitution was written, those district councils were prepared with 7 districts in mind. Now we have 19 constituencies, and there are slight but minor changes that relate specifically to the constituencies versus the district approach, and those changes will be included and encapsulated in the overall constitutional modernization process.
But does it need to? Because I think the Constitution only says that there shall be advisory district councils, and then it points to the fact that we would bring a law into being to create those advisory district councils. So I'm not too sure that I agree with you that those changes have to take place in the Constitution.
Right. Well, again, the Cabinet takes a different viewpoint on that.
Okay.
And certainly the discussions that I've been privy to all have included the provisions for the district councils to be included as part of the constitutional modernization exercise, and they'll be taken at one time. The other question was relative to what was it?
The standards in public life.
Yes, the standards. Thank you very much. I sit as a member on the Standards in Public Life Commission. We've had at least 2 meetings so far. I agree with the caller. Certainly, the Standards in Public Life Bill was one of those pieces of legislation that received unanimous support from both sides of the aisle. There were some challenges, particular in terms of not so much the politicians, and I made this point earlier on in the year. It's not the politicians, the public officials who are beholden to the standards in public life, but in many cases, the pushback that we received on this was from persons who occupy boards, whether it be work permit boards, health insurance boards, health commission boards, the kind of information that they would otherwise be required to provide. Also, the liability issue on these individual private citizens. So we had to take a look at that to, whilst we want to maintain a high bar and high standard, what we cannot afford is to pay it so high that we don't have persons in civil society volunteering their time to serve on these boards because of the onerous process on which their membership stands. I can tell you that as a member of the Standards in Public Life Commission, that and the committee rather, I would like to see those things brought in line before the end of the year. It could very well be that this will be one of the items that will be on the December agenda for the Legislative Assembly. But regrettably, I do not have any fixed timeline in which to provide to the caller. But I can certainly make that commitment to him that once we can arrive at those dates, those hard dates, I'll be happy to come back with and provide it to him. But certainly I would agree with him. Both of those questions are very important, and the Government of National Unity is working towards making them a reality through implementation.
Okay. We know that Mr. Clifford has to leave us, and we have one caller. Just very quickly, one of our listeners has written in and said, when are the airlines going to be made aware that they do not have to give out the forms. I had to do it yesterday again, and I know, Mr. Clifford, you mentioned this earlier, and I wonder whether or not any thought has been given to all of the airlines, giving them a specific line that they should give to their passengers when they're making these announcements on board the aircraft, giving them specific wording as to what to say, because sometimes they do seem confused, a little bit confused in terms of what they're telling passengers.
And we've done that in the past.
Okay,
we're going to do it again because of the issues we've had with them. But what we also face on occasion is, for instance, on aircrafts, is these airlines, the majority of the problems are with the larger airlines. So what you have sometimes is a last-minute change of aircraft, last-minute change of crew at a departure gate, and then things kind of get out of hand at that point. So those are things that we don't have any control over in the Cayman Islands. And so we think that we're likely to continue to have some problems on occasions, but we're going to try to minimize them to the extent that we can. But where you have a special change of aircraft and crew at the last minute, it does create some problems.
Yeah. Okay, Mr. Clifford, I know you have to leave.
Yes, thank you very much.
So I want to thank you. We have one caller. Let's go to the phone lines. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record. Okay, we're going to take the break first. I'll allow Mr. Clifford to depart. And when we return, we have one caller and have another WhatsApp. So, Mr. Harris, it looks like you're going to be captured here for a little longer.
Like it. Thanks a lot.
Right, please stay tuned. Okay.
Are you kidding me?
What's wrong?
I ran out of my meds and I have an interview in about an hour.
Why not call CTMH Doctors Hospital Pharmacy? They'll be able to help.
You think so?
Absolutely. Their pharmacists are brilliant for fast, efficient and professional service.
CTMH Doctors Hospital Pharmacy provides you with more than just prescriptions. We strive to make your health our concern. We recognize the complexities of pharmaceuticals and the need to personalize your care. That is why we offer personalized one-on-one counseling. Call us today or visit our website at caymanpharmacy.com.
A trip to New York City is the experience of a lifetime. Starting this December, Cayman Airways will be offering daily non-stop flights from Grand Cayman to New York City. That's right, Cayman Airways is going daily to New York City starting this December. Stroll through Central Park or take in the bright lights of Times Square. Enjoy a Broadway show or visit museums, the Empire State Building, and so much more. Whether you're visiting for business or pleasure, you'll fall in love with New York City. And daily non-stop flights from Grand Cayman aboard Cayman Airways starting this December. For details and to book, call Cayman Airways reservations at 949-2311. Contact a travel agent or visit CaymanAirways.com. You remember the sale at Vamp Motors?
Yeah, the Your Sale, Your Choice, the one where you can get cash back or can put the savings to extend the warranty or upgrade features?
Yes, it's still going on, but now you can get $8,000 off a new Ford Ranger truck. $8,000, you know?
You for real?
Come see for yourself. While they still have so much to choose from, save big during Your Sale, Your Choice at Vamp Motors. With almost every vehicle on sale, you decide whether to get your dream ride at its lowest price. Take cash back, add years to the warranty or service plan. Choose an add-on or mix your options. Your sale, your choice, because you know what you need, and Vamp Motors will help you drive it home. Vamp Motors on Walker's Road.
Cayman's cruise industry must be preserved and developed. It is a myth that the cruise lines will continue to call on Cayman at the rate they do now without the piers. It is a fact that the mega-class ships will not be tendered. Arrivals will decline by half over time as the older ships are decommissioned. This will hurt our economy and thousands of Caymanians who work in this industry. If we want to continue providing opportunities for Caymanians, we need the piers. Support the piers. Support our tourism.
Initiating system.
For information that matters. For the Record with Orrett Connor continues right now on Radio Cayman.
Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. Mr. Austin Harris is still in the studio with me. We have one caller, so it looks as if I am not going to get that opportunity to raise another issue this morning, and that has to do with New Caledonia, the French Pacific Territory, where they recently, just this weekend, had a referendum on independence for that territory. And the independence referendum was defeated 56 0.4% chose to remain part of France, while 43.6% voted to leave, a tighter result than some polls had expected. Turnout was about 81%. The vote was promised in 1988, in a 1988 deal that put an end to the violent campaign for independence that they had in that territory as well. So very interesting, with that. One of our listeners, I think we lost the caller that was on hold. One of our listeners has written in and said good morning to our guests. And they were wondering what both of you thought about a national fingerprint system being implemented. The person says that we have a lot of people here who are murderers, criminals, and because we don't have a national fingerprint system, they feel that they can't be caught, and wanted to know what we think about a national fingerprint system.
Well, certainly thank the listener for the question, and I would have to say personally in short that I agree with the national fingerprint database. And certainly when we look ahead, I touched on it earlier on, that in the latter part of 2019, particularly as we continue to expand the Customs and Border Control aspect, we will also be introducing an APHIS law or an APHIS bill, which will be the automated fingerprint system, particular to Customs and Border Control. Right now, we do have, at least in its initial stages, a fingerprint system. I think what is missing is the database in which to compare it to, both regionally and internationally. We have made some positive strides with the Interpol relationships, again, as a result of our exercises in the Customs and Border Control realm, our consultations with both Homeland Security as well as the relevant counterparts in the United Kingdom in this exercise. So these discussions have been taking place, but certainly to answer the listener's question, I completely agree and support a national fingerprint system and database. I think it would work in conjunction with a national ID system, which, again, we are working towards completion. I think a great deal of work has gone into it already, but and I'm hopeful that within this 4-year administrative term that we will have that national ID system. Whether or not it includes fingerprints or not, I would like to see it very much so. But, we've seen improvements most recently in the Ministry of Planning and Commerce, Minister Joseph Hugh, rolling out your renewal for your vehicle registration online. We are slowly but surely providing more and more government services online to our customers. And again, that's the entire efficiency exercise. So I say that to say that as we move towards greater and greater e-commerce, the need for a digital ID becomes more and more important. And that digital ID plays not only in commerce, but also national security as well. So I would definitely support that move in that direction. And I can tell you that the government is looking in that direction.
And certainly the ability for the enforcement authorities here to build up the database for fingerprinting, and having something to compare fingerprints against. Mr. Clifford and leaving his comment was that other organizations like Interpol do have databases that we can use to compare what we have, with what they have as well. I was amazed and impressed last week at the Vehicle and Licensing Department, and this is something that I believe that they have been pushing, but I think they need to get out on the public stage and promote this new app that they have. In relation to whether you're applying for a driving written test, a driving test, renewal of a driver's license, new registration of a vehicle. You can go in, you can see how many people are waiting. You will have a number assigned to you electronically. You can stay in your office or at home and know when it's getting near to your number to be accessed, and you can go there. Very impressed by what they have. We need to make sure that the public out there knows that this is in existence and that it can be used. Certainly reduces the number of people who are just sitting down there waiting and complain about the wait times.
No, you're absolutely right. Again, kudos and congratulations to the Ministry of Planning, Commerce and Infrastructure for making that monumental, important step into the digital realm. When the news was being broken on this fantastic new initiative, you and I were together in studios engaging in a similar conversation. I hope this week to be given my own introduction, if you will, crash course into the new app, so that I've only heard about it. I haven't really had the opportunity to see it firsthand and to try it. I've been speaking to a number of persons key to its development over the course of the last week. But of course, we were together on air when it was unveiled for the first time. But it will go a long way to, again, improving the efficiency as it relates to Department of Vehicle and Driver's License. I mean, I was there just last week trying to get my license renewed, and I ended up going 3 times. Because I was hoping, the lines would be shorter. Mm-hmm. So I went early morning, lines were packed. I went mid-afternoon, lines were packed. I went just before closing time, again, lines were packed. And there was just, a person can spend hours waiting in line. Mm-hmm. And again, it is just another example of where we can do things better, where, again, a lot of these processes can be done online. And again, what is underpinning all of this? Technology. Yeah. And that technology, as we talked about, is now sitting in the palm of our hands.
And the fact that our population is a much younger population who are now more inclined towards technology and having the smartphone in their hand and being able to do everything from the smartphone. That is extremely important. We old people, we talk about, we want Cayman to remain the same. We reminisce on the past, but we also have to be looking towards the future and what we are putting in place for the generation that is coming up, so that at the end of the day, they are on par with their counterparts throughout the world.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned it, because certainly in conversations with my own mother, she's been in this country for over 50 years. So certainly she remembers Cayman as it once was, and she oftentimes reminisces, if not complains, about where we are today and how much different it is. But that said, I also enjoy and almost marvel, if not smile. She's got a smartphone now, and she oftentimes sits with her grandson, my son, who's now explaining to her things like WhatsApp, things like Facebook, things like Instagram, how to move around and to navigate these systems. And whilst she may be slower, I see the enthusiasm in her eyes when she's learned a new trick on her phone. So to your point, it is the younger generation that are, I think, driving many of these technological advancements and embracing it. And I thank them for it, because it has made our lives a lot easier.
Okay, Mr. Harris, I want to thank you again for making yourself available. And even when our time had run out in terms of talking about Customs and Border Control Bill, you certainly made yourself available to remain here and to chat with me as well. I want to thank you, our listening and viewing audience, for allowing Radio Cayman, and by extension For the Record, into your homes, into your vehicles as you traverse the busy roads of the Cayman Islands, into your places of work, whether it be an office cubicle or if you're working in the outdoors. I also want to remind you that we are our brothers and our sisters' keepers. There is always someone out there who's less fortunate than we are, and I ask you to extend a helping hand to them. If you can't do that, then I suggest you donate to a worthy charity, because you always want to consider those who need, not necessarily those who want or even those who crave. I say to you, have a great day. Continue to support your radio station, Radio Cayman. Join Talk today at 12:15. And as usual, we ask the good Lord to bless these 3 beautiful, wonderful Cayman Islands. But before we close off, I have another question, if Miss Susan will allow me. Someone wanted to say, I just tuned in. I'm asking if size matters with the size of Sorry, no, got the wrong one. Sorry. Good morning. How much is the new allowance on duty free in the Cayman Islands? I think it's increased to $500.
Yes. We went from $300 to $500.
Yes.
And that, again, takes effect this month. And hopefully we will, have the end users take advantage of it.
Okay. And that is 500 CI dollars as well.
CI dollars, yes.
Okay. And this one is a little bit long. Good morning to you all. For the record, I'm happy with the progress for the recent merging of enforcement, but I would really like to see more officers fully equipped with tactical ballistic, where more often, especially at the airport and other high-risk areas, and while conducting random raids island-wide. I notice a lot of officers fail to equip themselves with bulletproof vests and other updated protective gear. But I believe at our ports of entry in particular, I must say that when you are dealing with U.S. Customs and Border Control, some people feel intimidated with those guys with their firearms,
Yes.
on their side.
Yes.
We again, like Mr. Clifford and you, Councillor Harris, pointed out, we're a tourist destination. We rely heavily on our tourist industry.
Yes.
We don't want to look intimidating. We don't want to make people believe that they're in some sort of a police state or anything.
No.
When they're out there in the field, it's another story altogether, but they're certainly not there.
We have specialized units, tactical units, response units that certainly, if the situation demands it and warrants it, certainly there will be no shortage of that. Officers who need that necessary protective gear will always be supplied it. But to your point, we do not need to be a militarized state. We do not want to give that sort of perception or sense, particularly to our passengers at the airports or otherwise. I do not believe that we put our officers in any degree of danger in our current approach. Like I said, those officers who require such equipment are issued such equipment. Should the need arise that requires a more robust response, we have units available to us that can provide that response. But do we need to see it across the entire department and unit? I don't think so. And certainly to your point, I don't believe either our customers or our residents necessarily want us to go down that road. So, and in the meantime, we also have to thank Almighty God and the fact that, according to the U.S. State Department, we are threat advisory 1, which is the lowest advisory yet, so our travelers can have a sense of ease. There are no issues here in the Cayman Islands, but certainly, as Mr. Clifford pointed out, we won't allow that to let us be complacent. But at the same token, we are grateful that we do not suffer from some of the significant challenges that some of the larger nations do. And one of those is the fact that we don't have to feel as if we live in a police state, which I think is a good thing.
Okay. Thank you again, Mr. Harris. Folks, thank you. Have a great day. God bless.
For the Record is brought to you by Fidelity Bank. For all your banking and pension needs, call or visit a Fidelity branch today. Vamped Motors, the only authorized Ford and Toyota dealerships serving the Cayman Islands. And Cayman Pharmacy Group, with locations in West Base and professional pharmacy at CTMH Doctors Hospital. The Cayman Pharmacy Group has a location for you just around the corner. And Seaboard Marine. With over 35 shipping ports, find your shipping solution by calling Seaboard Marine at 949-4977.
Continuing the Caymanian tradition.
Let Cora keep my ground so clean.
The heart and soul of the Cayman people. Thank you for keeping the culture alive.
There's the news every day. From East End to Georgetown, down into West Bay.
Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.